Hey everyone! Welcome back to another episode of The Other Side of the Struggle. We have back with us the fabulous and wonderful Kushla Chadwick. She's one of my favorite guest speakers and also one of my very good and best friends. And so we have a lot of fun together as we work together, and as we play together. A lot of fun. But she's also the co-founder with me of the Unashamed Life Coach School, which has been so much fun to do. It's kind of fun working with her because we both feel a little bit like, mocked in with our hair on fire sometimes with this. But we get to certify, life coaches who want to specialize in helping others with their trauma. And then on her own, she's also the business coach and the founder of the Confident Coach Academy. She's definitely been on this show multiple times. Everybody loves her, and I don't know if she knows this or not, but actually, her episodes are some that get the most downloaded, which is really interesting. Yes, I know.
Fantastic.
So we definitely love having Kushla on the podcast, and so let's welcome her back with a giant welcome.
Yay. Thank you, Erin. It's a thrill to be here as always.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So, Kushla, uh, we're talking about coaching frameworks and for my audience, a lot of them are, you know, men and women who are dealing with betrayal trauma or, you know, there's actually many different kinds of trauma. You've got grief trauma, betrayal trauma, physical trauma, all kinds that
Huge
can,
list.
yeah, a huge list, right?
Hmm.
And what we talk about on this podcast is actually very relevant to almost every kind of
Hmm.
trauma.
Yep.
Um, but not everyone is a coach, right? Like not everybody feels the inclination to coach. Not everybody feels like um they want to get into the coaching field, but some of them are very much into the coaching field and very much into coaching and want to like help other people through their trauma. And so like I still felt like this was such a relevant conversation though for
Mm.
everyone.
Absolutely.
Because that's one of the things that caused me to heal was actually my ability to self-coach. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, tell us a little bit more about like what is a coaching framework?
Okay, cool. Yeah. I love talking frameworks, and I will probably talk fast because this is a subject that really
Take
excites me.
notes.
Yeah. So as far as coaching frameworks, I'm going to speak to firstly the coaches, and then very quickly I'm going to transit and speak to those of you who aren't coaches, right? So normally when I speak about coaching frameworks, I'm talking about like someone's program that they're building and making sure that conceptually it's got like a beginning point and an end point, right? So that it's able to be repeatable for you, regardless of whether you're working with private clients, group clients, an online program, VIP day, all those types of things, right? So I'll give you an example. So for me, with the Confident Coach Academy, which I've run for years, that's like the first kind of part in the framework. You might divide it into 4 parts, right? Would be like lead attraction, right? And then the next part would be like, sales and like really making those convert well. And then the next part would be like client care. And the next part would be your money mindset. So I've got a framework which I work in, and that's normally where I help my clients when I'm business coaching to do. Now, if I transit over to those of you who aren't interested in being coaches or you're not coaches yet, and talk about a framework, and this is where we really want to dive into our conversation today, right? Is like it's really important to have a framework to be able to just coach yourself in general. And there is a coaching framework out there. I use it, you use it, we
Yeah.
use it with our clients, we use it with ourselves, and many other coaches out there use it. I would love to say that I invented it, but I didn't. um, yeah, and I'll tell a little bit of the story behind it, behind how I come to learn about it, maybe as we go into our conversation today. But really, the framework I'm talking about is a self-coaching framework, which coaches can use also, obviously, for themselves and for their clients. And it's really based on the premise that, we have our conscious mind and our subconscious mind. And while I'd love to say, oh, yeah, the conscious mind, it's the powerhouse. That's where our freedom lies. That's where our agency lies. That's where our awareness lies. It's the subconscious mind that's running most of the things that we do day to day, like 95% of the things that we do day to day, And for some people who lack a lot of awareness or lack a very, what's the word? They just lack general awareness of how they think throughout the day. It's probably higher, like, 98% of the things that they do through their day are just completely on default, and they're doing very little original thinking. And so we want to be able to address that if we've got big goals, if we've got big dreams, if there are things that you want to do. And it could be like aspiration based, like, for instance, I might work with a client who wants to make their first $250,000 a year, right? Or their first $1 million, right? And then there might be some of you who are coaches and you're like, I help clients who, want to be able to create a hot body, a gorgeous body, and have the best health of their life, right? So
I want that.
yeah, exactly, right. Or it could be like overcoming the pain or struggle, and that's where a lot of people do come in as well. But they're like, my relationship is failing. Your clients, they want help getting over the heartbreak of discovering that their husband is got a really strong porn habit or a porn addiction, right? And they need to deal with that so they can get on with living again and functioning in a healthy way. So whether it's aspiration based, that someone's got a goal, or it's overcoming a struggle, there's big goals that we have, and there are things that we want to do. And if you've never done them before, then we need to really make sure that we're changing the programming that's happening in our subconscious mind, because it's programmed for us to do things the way it's doing them now. And if you keep doing things the way you're doing them now, you're going to keep getting the same result, right?
Right.
Yeah. So we need to be able to get into the subconscious mind. And we also need to be able to bring the right things to our conscious mind that relate to not just your values of who you are as a human being, but the values of who you will be when you've got the result of whatever it is you want. And also, address the conscious mind, the subconscious mind to get us there. And whether or not for you want to get there faster, whether you want to get there with more joy, like whatever it is, this coaching framework is there to help us understand how we think, how we feel, how we take action, and to separate that from what is a circumstance, like what's actually happening in our lives, and enable us to get the result in the fastest, most enjoyable, whatever way possible, right? But to help us to get there. So that's the coaching framework that you and I are teaching to our clients in the Unashamed Life Coach School. It's the coaching framework that you and I use in ourselves, and it's definitely the coaching framework that I know many other coaches out there base their work on. Obviously not all, but I know many of them out there are. And I think I think if you're not using this framework, you're really, really missing out. And
right.
really missing out.
Right. And for the framework that she's talking about, like she talks about the CTFAR, and what I call it is the 5-step thought process. And that's actually a podcast that's already been done, and so you guys can definitely take a look at that as well. But we'll go into that a little bit deeper as well.
Yeah.
But one of the major things you just mentioned is the word programming. Right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times, like when we talk about programming, we think about computers and putting computers in, and like the numbers and the digits and the dials and programming the computer, right? So that way
Yeah.
it works at its highest functionality for us to use it as a tool to get our end result, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, you think about like what you and I do. Like, I'm looking at my computer right now. It's a like brand new Mac
Beautiful. Yeah.
computer,
Yeah.
right? And it's
Uh-huh.
beautiful. It runs smoothly. It's super fast. It's going to go for a long time. But I've literally programmed it to run my business and my podcasting and like everything that I need this computer to do, so that way I get the best result for my business.
Yeah, you're putting the right software in.
Right. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely, absolutely. And
Yep.
we were very intentional with the programming that we put on there so that way we get the end result. But we don't think about the programming that we're using with our biggest computer, which is our brain, right?
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
it's so important that we actually put in the right programming so that way we get the right result. And so, when we think about programs, um this is why, going through some self-coaching and doing the coaching framework as Krishla's talking about, this is why it's so important to know this information,
Yeah.
you know?
As you said, you kind of spoke about the computer program. Like the human brain itself can process something ridiculous, like 11 million bits of information. It's far more complex and amazing and beautiful than the best computers out there, right? So, and that's fantastic that it can do that. And it does a lot of functions that we're just not even aware of. Like you don't think about making your heart beat, right? It just goes about and does it. You know what I mean? But as far as our conscious mind goes, we can process and handle something like 40 to 50 bits of information a second. So, compare 11 billion bits of information to like 40 to 50 bits of information. So you can see, like, wow, our conscious mind, where we have our awareness, is really powerful because we get to choose there.
Right.
We get to select what goes into our subconscious. We get to reject what goes into our subconscious mind there. But it's only so small of an amount. So it's so important we are intentional with it
Mhm.
rather than going on default. Like if you want something that different than you're experiencing, awareness of what we're thinking, awareness of what we're feeling, therefore awareness of what we're doing is imperative. And so that's why the self-coaching model of like and I just call it the coaching framework. And that's why we need to make sure that we are aware of what's happening there. Because like
Yeah.
95% of our life is coming from programs. And that's fine if, like you've said, you've put the right software in that program. A lot of us need to take out the software that's on there because it's outdated. It takes way too long. It's messy. It's ugly. I think of when I started not when I started high school, my last year of high school. I turned 50 next year, right? So, if I go back to my last year of high school was 1991, and for computer studies, what we did was this was our lesson for computer studies. Right? And I don't even know if they have computer studies classes at school anymore because who needs them? 3-year-olds know how to use a computer, right?
Right.
But back, but back then,
I
the
remember.
lesson,
Yeah,
the
I
lesson
remember.
would be like log on, play a game called Where is Carmen San Diego? And I think the screens were in green and black. And then we would practice logging off. That was our lesson. Now, I mean, that kind of software and the programs that they use, I I don't want to be playing that game. Where's Carmen San Diego? Well, I might for a little bit of nostalgia, right? But other than that, like if I'm a game lover and say I want to be the best gamer, like you're not going to be able to run that software. You need to
Right.
update it. You need something that's actually aligned with who you are now, what you're able to do now, what games you're doing.
Yeah.
It's just a little analogy there. But yeah, if it would be helpful, I'd love to be able to dive in a little bit about the framework so that people kind of get a gist of what we're talking about here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm thinking about this cuz I've also talked about like the trauma cycle,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the things that I've been thinking about as you've been talking are a couple of things. Number one, the whole 1991 computer thing. I was in first grade, but I still remember doing that
Uh-huh.
lesson too. I'm like,
Uh-huh.
oh, yeah. And then like the
That's
tippity
cute.
typing and stuff. Yeah, it was super cute. So I was getting a little bit of nostalgia there as well. But like the really big piece here that I want to talk about is that this framework is actually the opposite of the trauma cycle. And we
Yes.
we talk about like how trauma is like the opposite of trauma is actually creation.
Mm-hmm.
We think it's joy, we think it's happiness, we think all of these things, but actually those are the results of the opposite. And
Mm-hmm.
so, you know, when we get into this coaching framework, or the CTFAR, like you call it, or the 5-step thought process, like I call it, um, it really is the process of reversing that trauma cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So you mentioned that I call it the CTFAR. Now, that's just an acronym for
Right.
basically what the coaching framework is, right? Because the coaching framework deals with like what's the circumstance currently in your life. And when we talk about circumstance, we're speaking about what's factual. What can you know for sure? What, like if there was a video camera there with the sound turned on and it was like watching it from all the different angles, right? So multiple video plays, it's like going to be 100% provable as a fact, right? So there's that. And also other people's actions fall into a circumstance as well, because they're out of your control. We're talking about self-coaching, like that goes into the circumstance, okay? And then we have the thought line. So again, it's CTFAR. So then we have the thought line in terms of like, it's really important for us to become aware of actually what we're thinking. And it can be trippy for some people to like just to start to notice their thoughts and you know, think about what you're thinking about. It can begin to be
Right.
really, really trippy. Yeah. But yeah, so much power in there. So your thoughts, and often people think that like when they start to look at thoughts and circumstances, they mix up and think that a circumstance is like a thought, or they think a circumstance is a fact, but is actually their thought about the circumstance, right? And so that it can get, it's really interesting to really look at it and say, oh, this is what I'm thinking, oh, this is the circumstance on this line, and then this is the thought of what the circumstance is. You know, this is where our perception is, and our perception comes again with all those subconscious programming ideas, right, and filters and beliefs, right, because our beliefs sit in our subconscious mind. So it's going to filter everything through that. So if we want to be able to see something differently, often we've got to go in and do some changing again of the subconscious mind. So we've got our thoughts, and then we've got our feelings, and then our thoughts and feelings lead to our actions. And by actions, I also mean the things that we don't do, right?
Yeah.
So
Or
on the
inaction. Yep.
yeah, action line, our inaction, what we do, don't do, and also what we react to, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all of that's in the action line. And then lastly is the result, right? And so if you know what your result is, like let's just say one of your clients want to heal their marriage, they're both the husband and the husband and the wife, you know, they've had some problems. Maybe he's had a porn habit or a porn addiction. He's come open about it. He really wants to change. He wants to gain his wife's trust back. She wants to be able to, they both want to be able to have conversations and be able to really dialogue openly about what's happening, what's coming up for them, process through the work themselves, right? Well, I mean, that's the result they want, is to have a loving marriage with open communication and to have trust again, right? The
Right.
circumstance might be right now that the husband has a porn habit, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the circumstance. The circumstance is the stuff that's factually, and all the work that we do is in these three here, right? It's within our thoughts,
Right.
feelings, and actions. That's where all of our work is in there. But
Right.
often we're blaming the circumstance, and we're mourning the fact that we don't have the result yet, but we're putting all of our attention here on the circumstance, and there's like nothing you can do there. that's not where your power is. Your power is in looking at these three. So I feel like I'm nearly going to give you guys the finger. For those who will be listening to this, I'm like holding up my fingers and showing, and I was like nearly got my fingers confused. Anyway, yeah, so it's just like a little bit of an overview of
Yeah.
what the coaching framework is. Again, I didn't invent it. If you don't mind, I'll share like a little bit of a history for how I discovered it. So
Yeah, and then I'd be happy to do the same.
cool.
But yeah, like one of the things that um as you're talking about this, like one of the things that I realized with this framework too is that it's not a linear line.
Mhm.
This is actually
Yeah.
it's a cycle. And because no matter how you work it, whether you're in the trauma cycle or you work it backwards, okay? Um, you can sit there and you can think about your circumstance over and over and over again, like you were saying, but that eventually does lead to the result, which gets you another circumstance, which leads to another result, which gets you another circumstance, and you just keep going over and over and over again. And this is where we find ourselves in the trauma cycle, right?
Yeah, it's just not the result that you want. That's
Yeah,
all.
it's not the result you want. And so when you work it backwards, you can sit there and say, okay, so what is the result I want? Like getting
Mhm.
really clear
Yeah.
with that, like saying something like, I want a trusting relationship again with my
Mhm.
spouse, right?
Yeah.
I would really love my spouse to talk to me, trust me, and communicate to me without feeling the need to um gaslight or lie, right?
Mhm.
And I remember thinking this exact thing, as I was going through my healing process with my husband, right? And it's as I worked that backwards, I had to ask myself, so what actions am I taking? This is where we get into extreme ownership here. What
Mhm.
actions am I taking that's causing me to get something opposite of the result that I'm wanting?
Yeah.
And ooh, it was a bit like eating a lemon that had been dipped in apple cider vinegar for like 3 weeks, you
I was
know?
gonna say I love eating lemons and I like apple cider vinegar for the health benefits. I don't know about the 3 week situation.
Yeah. It felt a little bit like that. I'm just being honest. But I had to get like super clear because if I was going to get that result, let me just get clear with my English
Good
here.
England.
I think
Good
I know
England.
it. I think I know it. I've only been speaking it for, 39 years. I'm pretty sure I know English. Um, but like it made me have to get very, very uh honest with myself and see some things that I did not want to see.
Mhm.
And then I had to weigh, do I really want this
Mhm.
result? Because if I really want that, this is the sacrifice that is required of me. Well, as I kept working it back, well, what are the feelings that I
Mhm.
need to have or that I desire to have?
Yeah.
What are the feelings I currently have? And then, what are the thoughts that will, support that feeling? And I worked the cycle backwards.
Mhm.
And even though I couldn't change my husband, the way I responded to it has, helped me grow into a whole different person. And you can testify to that too. I mean, I have known each other for what, like 7, 8 years now. We've been
Mhm.
working together, in a very close relationship. And even in the last year, I've seen like in myself just a big growth. You know
Mhm.
what I
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And as you speak about, your journey and doing the reverse cycle, I want people to know, like, we're very dynamic. The way that our neural pathways connect to one another. So for instance, someone might hear someone crying, and to them that sets off this whole trigger. Our neural pathways, hearing someone crying, it means that maybe there's violence, like it triggers a memory of violence, and you're not necessarily thinking about it. Well, you're not thinking about it. Subconscious, it could mean that for them because they heard their mother being hit and crying when they were a child, right? And they could be watching a movie with someone crying, and subconsciously it's triggering a response for them. So
mean?
it's really powerful for us to, like, understand all the stories that we're carrying, bring them up to the top of our awareness, and like start doing the work. What ones am I really going to I'm happy to keep? They're really helpful. They're really powerful. They're really leading my life in the direction I want to go. Which ones do I want to tweak a little bit because like they're close, but they're not quite, right? And then
Right.
which ones do I just want to let go and install like just a completely new software, completely new way of thinking, right? So, you know, you mentioned you had that experience with your husband and that brought that to your awareness. So whether or not it's like you're noticing something through taking an action or doing something or not doing something, or whether a thought comes to mind or whether it's a feeling that triggers a response, they're all connected and very intricate. And if you're working on one, it helps you to get clearer on the rest of them. So yeah, just so powerful for us to be able to really look at ourselves and see, where am I in the trajectory of my life and where I am now and the potential that I have, because, you know, we have beyond what we can recognize potential, all of us.
Yep.
And if you think about doing something, there is a part of you that you know that that's actually something you can do. You might not be able to figure out the how, and some of it might just be completely impossible, and that's where we're going to need the universe to orchestrate things for us. And I mean the universe is in the universe that God's created, right? He's the chef, the universe is the cake kind of situation. So that's what I mean. But it's like certain laws that are a natural operation. And so when you know what you want, and then you can begin to then the universe can begin to really put things in order for you so that you can get what you want faster. But you need that clarity initially of what you want. And then you can do the homework of like working through your own thoughts and your feelings. Usually, sometimes people will give like this whole big vomit of like how they feel. Like you want to just kind of bring it down to like one word. This is how I'm feeling. I feel angry. I'm sad. I'm grieving. I'm confused. You know, whatever the feelings are. But start to really break things down, and you can do amazing things and much faster when you can separate. This is my thought about the thing. These are how I feel, and ask myself, what are these feelings in alignment with the future that I want to create? If not, how do I want to feel this? How can I feel this more often? And it's not that sometimes people think you've got to create thoughts that really aren't your own thoughts. Sorry about the noise in the background. The dog's like not cooperating, doesn't even know we're recording a podcast.
What?
But you know, we want to like get everything in alignment. And I'll actually share a bit of a story. So years ago, this is before I was an entrepreneur, but I'd watched a movie called The Secret, and I don't know how many of your listeners have watched The Secret. I loved it though. When I listened to it, just something in me lit up, and I was watching it with two of my best friends, husband and wife, and they were like, we were vibing off how each other felt. And as we watched it, anyway, I went over with them to the States, and while we were over there, I'll back up a little bit. So I had one child at home. I was breastfeeding still, but she was also eating, so I was able to leave her. I went over with $200 in my pocket, and I went to an event, a Bob Proctor event, and I hope some of your audience members have heard of Bob Proctor, because he was amazing. Right? He was amazing, yeah. And he shared something called the stick man. So the stick man was not a concept that he created. It was a concept created, I can't even remember his name right now, but basically, if you imagine like you know, the big head and then the little body and these little things coming out, and it's just a way of showing like you know, your subconscious mind, your conscious mind, thoughts, feelings, and actions. And so I was like, it's just to give a visual representation of how our mind works, right, in a way that we can grasp with a picture. And as I was watching this, I was like, all these lights are going on for me. And so really that was the first time I got to see like this visual representation of the power of your thoughts, feelings, actions, and how you can get the result that you want. So that started for me, like, I don't know, maybe my youngest daughter is 19 now. Oh my goodness. So maybe like 17 years ago was when I first heard it. But really, to break it down even further into just really getting clear and understanding what is a circumstance, what is a thought, what is a feeling, and then what is the action or inaction or reaction that you want in all of this, right? This is where your power is, in the thoughts, feelings, actions. And so over the years, I've learned lots of different ways of coaching. And usually when I talk about coaching with someone, there's the classic field of coaching, as you and I know, right? And in the classic field of coaching, it's client-led, where you're asking questions and people are under the assumption that your client knows the answers, right? That it's within them. And I get theoretically how that's really great. For me, I've always operated more from like, I mesh it to like, there's the coaching, and then there's the role modeling and the teaching and the mentoring, right? So I bring all of that together when I'm with my clients, because there's some things like my clients just actually don't know how to do yet, and I want to make it faster for them. So often a coach, if you're not a coach listening to this and you're considering working with a coach, they're not just going to use this framework with you or something like this framework with you. Hopefully they're going to know how to break down what's thoughts, what's feelings, what would be the right action or inaction for you. And so that hopefully they're able to help do that, but also then they're going to help you cut down the amount of time it takes you to get the result, because their experience or their knowledge or skills are going to be able to help you, like say, oh yeah, do this. This has been proven to work much faster. Dung, dung, dung. So they're going to shorten that work for you. And I'll add the caveat also that, though, like, I'm a huge advocate of self-coaching, and I think everyone should learn how to self-coach.
Right.
I think children should learn how to self-coach, right? However, everyone has blind spots.
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone has blind spots. So it's still so essential, and in my opinion, it's still essential to get outside support and help. And sometimes that means getting a coach, even though you might learn how to self-coach.
Right. And I'm sitting here processing and, having a little bit of a yawning issue behind all this. But the thing that I love that you're bringing out here, Kushla, is this idea that we already have the answers within us. And that's part of the reason why this framework actually works so well, is because we do. And granted, yes, like you said, there's times too where we're just like, and I think this is where, I get to talk about boundaries with my clients, is because oftentimes, like, people really honestly have no idea how to put boundaries together, right? But the one thing you mentioned too is, like, I've seen people, when they get on calls with us, they kind of like do that whole word vomit. And, I think it really, especially if you're going to get serious about doing this framework, one of the things that really will benefit you is doing a brain dump. That is your brain actually trying to dump all of the thoughts that are inside of it, so that way it can actually start unraveling it and organizing it. Your brain is a very organized tool. It likes being organized. It likes knowing where it's going to put all of this information, and it puts it in files and folders, and it's very much it is like a supercomputer, right? But
And then some.
yeah, and then some. But when you've got all of these thoughts happening and you're not actually being intentional about getting it out of your brain and onto paper, so you can start doing this framework, right? You're going to really, really struggle to be able to focus on the healing work, the coaching work, and the work that it takes to be able to get that result that you're looking for.
Yeah.
So make sure that if you're getting serious about this, and this is one of the problems that comes up for you, is this need to talk a lot, put some things into a brain dump, write it down.
Yeah, I'll say this too. When we start to do self-coaching, or even when we're getting coached with a coach, right? there are things that come up, and at first you'll be like, you'll see something as a problem. Well, most coaches know the first problem that comes up is not really ever the problem. It's very rare that that's the case, right? Unless the client has done a lot of the work and they're operating more from that conscious mind, conscious awareness, right? So it really does depend on where you are in the journey. But the problem for all of us is, or the opportunity, depending how you look at it, right? The memories stored in our subconscious are often memories, and everything that you've ever experienced, everything you've ever learned from these experiences, all stored in your subconscious mind, right? And the memories, though, they're often memories of events that we've misconstrued. And it's like we're looking at, say, a still photo of a video, right? And we're looking at one shot, and we have no idea of the context of everything. And we can actually be left, in essence, a part of us traumatized, even if we're not aware of it, because we've misconstrued at a point or time a particular event. And that happens for all of us up until the age of 7, maybe 8. Everything's been downloaded. It's not like going through a conscious mind filter. If this is where the stick man's really helpful, right? So if you imagine this is your mind, not that your mind is contained in your head, people, just to be clear. So for those who can't see, if you listen to the podcast, I've got my fingers together in a circle, put a line in the middle of them, right? And we just put the conscious mind in the top half and the subconscious mind down the bottom half. And this line, when we're born, it doesn't exist. Everything goes straight down. Like we're in a hypnotic state when we're born, right? So everything just goes straight down in there. And then as we get older and older, it's like that line comes across more and more. So less will get through necessarily, but a lot of it still does, until our reasoning faculties are there, so that we can actually choose or reject an idea or a thought or whatever. So yeah, the issue is a lot of the time we're working with things that we believe that actually aren't true. And honestly, even if they were true, I mean, you can like just change it, right? So that you can actually live your life the way that you want and do the things you want and experience the things you want and be the person you want to be, right? If believing another way isn't helpful, why would you do that, right?
Right.
So
Well,
yeah, it's really powerful.
As you're talking, like one of the things that comes up, like kept coming up to me, is this idea of like anger, and as we're talking about like this framework, right? And the feelings. One of the things I've learned about anger is that there's a subconscious uh idea behind anger of I don't know what else to do but get angry. You know what I mean? And
Yes,
so
in
like
some
like
cases,
not
yeah.
not not like that anger is bad or like to feel angry, but just like the way that we act upon the anger. Like s- uh a story from me is, before I healed, um I was in a constant state of anger,
Mm,
and constantly like lashing out at my kids, constantly lashing out at my husband and all of my relationships.
fun days.
And yeah, right. It wasn't it fabulous, And but as I got really honest with myself, I got realizing that whole idea of um I just don't know what to do here.
Mm.
You know what? I just don't know what to do here. And so when we get stuck like that, how does this framework help that?
Yeah. So it's a great question. When we are stuck, right? Really, the first thing is we want clarity.
Hmm.
And you kind of touched on it before. You spoke about like doing a brain dump and stuff. I have a process. I just call it the anti-dream, right? And basically, you want to do a write down, a brain dump, and it's really powerful to put your timer on for like say 2 minutes. And once that timer starts, you're not allowed to stop writing, and you just write everything you don't want, right? Everything you don't want at all. And if you want to, you can put it in categories. I don't want, whatever, right? But you just want to just keep thinking and not thinking. So you just want to keep writing and just let it come out. And actually, I would, if you want to put in categories, put it after, but just initially just do a brain dump. And then what you want to do is flip it and say, well, look, what's the opposite of this? What's the opposite of this? And that's going to get you way closer to recognizing what it is that you truly want. Because we live in a world of contrasts, and if there's something that we strongly dislike or hate, it's really going to inform you like what you actually do want, right? So for me, I'm so into natural health, and I'm like, I don't like, say, medication, right? And so that's going to inform you. Well, what I do like is I like whole foods. I like I can give you this long list, right? I love like all these other things, and that's just like a kind of a little example, or I don't like fighting. I don't like arguing. I don't like having my kids be yelled at, right? So what do you want? The opposite of that would be being able to talk with my children calmly. It would be being able to have like fun conversations, relaxing conversations with my husband where I feel safe, right? It would, so you can go in and it might, go a little bit sideways. So it might be like, I want for us to be able to have time laughing together as, parents and children. So sometimes it's the exact opposite, and then sometimes you'll say, oh, and these other little things as well. But yeah, it's a really great and easy thing that anyone can do, is just do a brain dump of like, what don't I want? What's your anti-dream? And then you can flip it over to actually what's the dream by looking at the opposite and then taking it from there.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
And as I've been thinking too, like a couple of things that because we're all in that state, you know what I mean? Where we're like, oh, I'm realizing I'm getting angry about this thing, and like, I don't know how to change it. Like, I know that's why I'm getting angry, because I don't know what else to do but get angry and show that I'm angry, right? And
well, can I say, actually, sometimes people do, like, if you're just talking about their thinking mind, they know what to do, right? They may, if they were to pause, if they could put the pause on, then their thinking mind could say, this is an option and this is an option. I could walk out of the house and go get some fresh air. I could try repeating what they just said to make sure I understood it properly. There's a whole bunch of things that a lot of the time people who are angry, they actually do know at least some of the things, maybe not like the most effective, maybe not the easiest way, but they do have some things that they know how to do. But what it is, it's because they're in reaction, again, it's going straight to their subconscious, right? And the way that everything's connected. So it's going to bring up that old programming. That old programming taught them like, hey, I need to protect myself. I need to raise my voice to be heard. Like, so all of these types of things straight into the old programming. And you're like, do I want to keep that? Not really. No,
yeah.
And so, yeah, we get to choose. We get to choose.
Yeah, and you absolutely do. You absolutely do. And like, I just, like, from my own personal experience, and I was thinking about this too, like, oftentimes there are times where I do still get angry and I'm like, oh, I do know what to do here, but then there's times too, like, where I'm like just feeling this intense
The program's
rage,
running.
Yeah, the program's running, and it's like, hold on a second, like, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And what ends up happening is your amygdala is on fire, and it's shutting down your thinking brain. Right? And we've talked a little bit about this, and that's why we ask ourselves, like, we don't know what else to do but get angry and show that we're angry, right? But
and actually, if we're in that situation, another thing that we can do, and maybe you were going to say this, but another thing we can do is actually just feel the feeling. We don't need to feel the feeling towards someone else. We want to just feel the feeling for ourselves. So if you feel like, there's nothing wrong with the feelings.
No.
And actually, I think it's, I've got to look up her name again. I think it's Jill Bolte. Bolte. Anyway, she's an amazing neuroscientist. Like, she's done some fascinating work, but she has shown that, any emotion, if we just sit with it for 90 seconds, it's going to chemically burn itself out of our body. It's going to run its course through our body, right? So often what we do is we try to push the emotion away, or push it down. And when we're doing those things, well, then we're going to dive straight into our subconscious programming, right? But if we can sit with it and feel it, it's just going to do its job in our body. And so if you can say, okay, 90 seconds, and just feel the feeling, just feel it, but don't direct it out to anyone else. Just feel it. And often then the solution can come to the surface of your mind. The subconscious programs kind of settle down. It's like there's like the danger's gone, and then you can engage your conscious mind, and that amygdala is like, okay. It's the chemical, and part of it is chemically the body is doing certain things, and the chemicals are actually changing, so you can actually then begin to engage the other parts of your mind, which make you capable of thinking again, right?
Yeah. Right. And it's and it's if you will sit with it for 90 seconds and just not really think about it.
No, but not think about it.
Yeah, just let yourself be angry. Because the thing is it's, and I've had this question asked before, like, but I'm still angry like days later, and it's because you're thinking about it.
Yeah,
right?
You're re-triggering the thought, which is re-triggering the emotion. So it's not, and that will happen if you, like, you've just got to sit there and think, not rerun the picture through your mind or through your ears, however kind of you're strongly processing it, not run the story through you again to try and re-trigger and think about what happened. It's just purely being in your body and letting yourself feel the emotions. So you might be like, if words want to run through your head, you might talk about where you're feeling the emotion in your body, or notice where you're feeling the emotion in your body. Like you say, it might be pinging down to my tailbone or to my shoulder, or all of that kind of stuff. So you can definitely make, if you want to, you can talk through it, but not talk through what triggered it. Just talk through what you're experiencing as you sit there. That's one way. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's really powerful, because that gives you permission. You're actually giving yourself permission to feel your feels.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
absolutely.
And then, after you felt it, then you can address what the trigger was.
Yeah.
Trying to address the trigger in the emotion is usually something that's going to consistently re-trigger you over and over and over for several days, or
or years,
or
the rest of your
years.
life.
Yeah.
Because there are old people who, we love our old people, but they've still got plenty of their stuff that they haven't dealt with, right?
Yeah.
So, age doesn't necessarily mean that we've gotten the wisdom from our experiences enough that we are kind of going to change the programmings that no longer work for us. I will give a little example for people just to make this a bit more easier for them to conceptualize with the emotions. So I want you to imagine that someone's told you like this really funny joke. Right? I'm terrible at telling good jokes, so I will tell I'll tell one, right? So one my sister told me, it's the only joke that I remember on Encore, is like, the horse walks into the bar and the bartender says, "Why the long face?" See, that cracks me up every time. Anyway, like it's a little that's my joke, right? I found it so funny. That one's just like, that's in the subconscious. It can bring it up at any time. But anyway, someone else tells you a funnier joke than what I just did, right? And you're going to laugh if you just react. If you're just allowing yourself to react to it, you're going to laugh. You're going to feel the feeling of funniness, or whatever the emotion is that goes with the joke. And if you don't keep running the joke through your head, eventually the joke's going to, like, the funniness is going to stop, and you're going to stop laughing, and chemically all the extra hormones and chemicals that have been released that were like making the laugh happen, they stop, and you just are like, okay, so you're back to normal. So what doesn't happen when someone tells a funny joke is you don't think, I'll come back and laugh about that later. right? And
Oh, they're
and
just even thinking about that is
yeah,
hilarious. You know what I mean?
yeah. But that's what we do with a lot of the things that feel negative to us, like anger, sadness, all of these things. We tell ourselves we can't experience this now. But actually, if you just sit with it for 90 seconds, and yes, something might come into your awareness that will re-trigger it, say the loss of a child or the loss of a loved one, right? Initially, we can sit with the feeling, it's going to do its work. And then maybe you're going to walk into their bedroom and, there is another trigger there, right? But the more you just sit with the emotion, the less things are going to need to like have a reaction to it. You've just come to a state of acceptance and peace, like neutrality around it. And so then you can just get on to like making choices from your conscious mind versus your subconscious mind.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I hope that makes
absolutely.
sense for people.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Kushla, like this is amazing stuff. Thinking about like the 5-step thought process or the CTFAR, right? And that's
Mhm.
one way you can remember, the
Yeah.
5-step thought process, CTFAR.
Mhm.
But so what do we want our listeners to do next with this
Yeah.
information? Like what
Awesome.
where do they get more help with us?
Okay, so I mean, there's a couple of things that they can do. We are running the first round of the Unashamed Life Coach School at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So the doors are closed for that. But if you want to get on the waiting list, if learning how to self-coach, you're like, firstly coach yourself. And then also if you want to coach others, if you like do want to build a really successful coaching business, helping others through their junk, trauma, all of that stuff. And it doesn't mean you're a trauma coach, because trauma happens in all the fields. People have
Yeah.
trauma, the way that they eat, the way that they communicate, all the things that they communicate. So if you want to join us, then you can message Erin or I on Instagram. So what's your Instagram handle, Erin?
It's Erin Anderson, Betrayal Trauma Coach. It's kind of long,
Okay. Yeah.
but you'll find it,
Okay. So
right?
yeah, or you can message me. My handle on Instagram is Kush Chadwick, and just type in Unashamed Life Coach School waitlist. Okay.
Yep.
And then we can send you information and let you know when we're going to open our doors again. So that's one thing. If that is something that's calling to you right now, then absolutely go on the wait list, and there will be special bonuses and things that you'll get notified on, like that. Once we start marketing it, generally speaking, those won't be available, but if you're in the wait list, they will be available. So that's one thing. Another thing also is if they just want to come along and listen. I have my own podcast, Confident Coach Academy podcast. Love to, you can come and join me there. So
Yes. Are you finally
awesome.
announcing that?
Yes, I'm finally announcing it. Announcing it. Yes, come and join me on my own podcast, Confident Coach Academy podcast. Super excited to have you guys there.
Go do it, guys. I have been
Yeah.
waiting for a long time for her to say that. Those few words, I've been waiting.
Yes.
You'll
Come
love it.
join.
You'll love
And
it.
if you're a coach also, you can come find my Facebook group. And you might have put in the show notes, Love Uprising. And I was like, oh my goodness, I've forgotten the rest of the words. But if you put Love Uprising, business and life coaching, I'm pretty sure that's it. Yeah. And then come in there, and we can talk all those types of things if you're interested in coaching. If you're a coach or you want to become a better coach or all those things, then come join me over there.
Right. And you also have a website too, right?
Yeah. confidentcoachacademy.com.
Yep. And mine is Erin Anderson, Betrayal Trauma coaching.com. And so you can also, check us out there and send us emails there as well if you are looking to get on that waiting list as well. So
there's heaps of resources on my website that they can find for ones who for coaches who really want to build their business up to their first I was going to say 5-figure months or 6-figure year, so your first 100K or more. Then there's actually a quiz that you can take on the homepage of confidentcoachacademy.com. So just go confidentcoachacademy.com/quiz, or just go to the homepage, and it's like the first thing that you'll see. And there's a quiz, and you get some really cool resources, which I give you access to depending on what stage of the business you're in when you do the quiz. So that's a really cool thing.
Awesome. Love it. Love it. Love it. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for hanging out with Kushla and I today. Come join us. Totally. Come join us for the join her
Unashamed
for the
Life Coach
Confident
School.
Coach Academy and us for the Unashamed Life Coach School. Gosh. Yeah. Anyway, come join us.
Join us.
Come join us. We'll have some fun. And we will see you guys next time. Bye, you guys.
Bye.
Bye.